So it is Sunday, uh, the 22nd of September. Stocks 50 review, nice and quick today. AB InBev popped up, but still a ways away from the 6150. Really didn't have the kick to get up there, so the kind of range continues, and yeah, not much to do. Ahold, similar. Look, Staples obviously very overbought coming into the FOMC, and they've definitely been leaking since. Um, Eventually, I think it finds a spot here, probably around 30, resets, and eventually builds for a break at some point. Relative has faded slightly, which you'd expect. Adidas has held in really well. This looks like it wants higher, um, but this range for now is just still sideways, and there's time to be involved. So just eventually the big spot will be getting above this 232 or 233 area, and we just have to wait for that. Adyen, a strong week, and this does look a lot better. You can see held this range, held the moving average, tight, and then broke, and pretty decent follow through and a good finish on the week. So I would think that gets to 1600 over the next little while. So one to track a bit closer. Air Liquide, pretty solid. I've liked this pullback and reset. It's not particularly fast or um, not super strong on the relative, but still high quality and beginning to work higher. Airbus, is probably held in better than Boeing, but again, not a huge amount of power. Even Friday, it gave back most of what it made on Thursday, so still just a slow grind. And there are definitely better names within industrials. Um, Allianz, it's getting into proper extended territory now. Just even in terms of kind of day count of moves up, little bit of an exhaustive looking candle on Friday, but nonetheless a very good setup, and you would imagine any sort of pullbacks will be met with buying. So definitely into a new trend phase, but at some point it's just going to need to go sideways for a bit. ASML, yeah, just look, it's hard work. You can see trying to get above this 745. That's going to be the key spot. If it does, you're back up into here, and as we've said previously, look, it looks a lot different when it's back up into this area. For now, it's just wait and see. We are just holding the top end of this range. It's a very messy retest, not what you'd want, but I would be still pretty patient on it from a longer term perspective. BASF looked like it was going lower and flicked higher, so that's short term encouraging, and has a lot of room. Like this 53 is the spot, so it's probably one that deserves a bit more attention, but just so messy longer term that it's hard to trust it. Buyer tightening up still. I think this is having enough goes at getting above this area. I would expect that it breaks higher, so it's one that does look interesting, even just from a trading perspective. BBVA, very solid. Um, we've made the point before that this was a leader within banks prior to the Sabadell news. That changed things a bit, but is trying to get back on track now, and that's a nice kind of reset there. So, banks more generally still holding up pretty well overall, and a bit of relative strength there too. BMW, big week obviously with the news flow, and you know, looked so much better here, having really rallied, gave a bit back on Friday on the Mercedes news. Um, I guess it's really a case of, look, do we retest these lows again? Can it hold up here? What you'd be looking for next week is just again probably another inside type week where maybe it can hold here above 73. Don't think you want it leaking back here again towards 70. And anything above 80 looks pretty good. Even for a broken bounce type move, you could just be Yeah, it needs to be above 80. As we said before, what's interesting is where it's reset from. It is a logical support area, so that's a positive. But now we'll just see what sort of follow through there is. Danone, strong, got up to the 65. Going to pull back a little bit now, but if it gets above it again, I think it's going to be an interesting name, and because you can easily map it back up to 75, maybe even 80. So certainly much improved and looks good as a staple. BMP um, got above this area, worked its way back. Hasn't been an easy one, but if we can hold above 65 for a bit, I think people will get more comfortable with it, and the really kind of bearish case probably is lessened as a result. AXA, same as Allianz, very good, very strong, probably timelier as well. Deutsche Börse, um, interesting here, this kind of long candle on Thursday where it reversed it all, got back on Friday, and would be disappointed if that doesn't come out the top end um, over the next little while. Nice kind of bull flag and a really tidy looking consolidation there over the last couple of weeks. So again, remains one of the strongest on our list. Vinci, obviously better bounce than Airbus, which is stuck back here. Working higher, but plenty overhead to keep it in check. And 120 is the big area it's going to need to get above at some point. DHL, knocked back obviously on the FedEx news. Um, it's just not really doing anything. This fake out here did reverse, but it didn't get above this one, so it's probably a sell here, or it's certainly not a overweight. Deutsche Telekom, I think this finally kind of just enough was enough post FOMC. You can see that some of these staples are really defensive. It has been the source of funds. Doubtful that this is going to just completely give it all up. Just more likely that we do one of these sideways type moves, burn off a bit of the overboughtness, and reset for maybe another move at some point. Essilor has been, from one of our, absolute most preferred names, has been a bit sluggish. Um, hasn't really kicked on, and obviously kind of annoying given that Meta is breaking to new highs. Um, but that said, it hasn't really broken down either. It just hasn't participated in the most recent moves, so the relative is weak. Um, let's see next week if it can reset. I think once it gets back above 211 again, that would be the catalyst for another big push, but just needs to go and do that now. NL, yeah, probably going to give you a nice entry on this kind of pullback here to 680. So watching for that. Looks fine. E&I, these have all reset a little bit, the energy names. As we've been kind of saying, they still feel like they're bigger consolidations rather than any major trend change. Iberdrola, good setup. Probably bounced better than some of the defensives, but again, I'd just say they're probably just too extended here, and just need a bit of time now to rebuild, track sideways, and just settle down a bit. Infineon just cannot get out of its own way, and that definitely is a worry. Just hasn't been strong or a leader, and hard to see how that turns if semis are still stay out of play for another while. So disappointing. ING, very strong, really really impressive. Kind of moved back to highs. One of the you can see financials have been quicker than anything else to get back there, which looks very encouraging. So it looks like it wants higher, and yeah, it doesn't look like banks are finished yet. Intesa, first of the banks to make new highs, I think, and good momentum. So to be impressed with that. Inditex, excellent, probably maybe the best name in Europe in the last few weeks in terms of just technical price action, reset, pull back, go again, and hard to know how long this could run, but very impressive, both absolute and relative. So a clear leader and a big compounder over time. Kering, the the direct opposite really. Like, I mean, you've tried to buy a million dips and hasn't worked, and until there is a really substantial reset, um, there just is absolutely nothing to do. And I think what you'll see with it, LVMH, etc. They just haven't had that really aggressive pickup in volatility that will force a bottom, um, and that still lies ahead, I'd say. Mercedes, um, I would think a key name to watch next week. Does it reverse? Is there a reason for it to get back up here, or are we fading? If we're fading, then it's going to take the others with it. So really big week for it here to try and reset. Um, LVMH is just a death by 1,000 cuts here, and slowly turning into a Kering type setup. Never going to be the same as Kering, but the point we've made a few times is that it just hasn't stopped where it would be logical for it to stop. Cannot see how it will not get back here to 540 and test this support from 2022. Um, a more bearish scenario, which I probably not don't think it does happen, is this 487, which is the top of this, or the bottom of this or the top of this pop and the bottom here. But this 545 is a bigger spot, and that's a very logical area for it to at least try and reset. So that looks like where it's heading. What would change that is a kind of a big spike in the opposite direction to really change the tape. Munich Ray is fine, high quality, tracking higher. Nordea, they had the opportunity to break it lower and didn't. So fine, but doesn't look like the best bank. Nokia holding in, not convinced, but fine. L'Oreal still friendless. A touch better last week. Needs to get back above this Thursday high, which would be getting it back above 380. I think it does look a bit better there. Probably prefer it to something like LVMH just because it's going to reset in a big area of support from the prior range. So we'll see if that plays out. Prozus, still one we kind of continue to like. Better week last week, and starting to see a tiny bit of strength, both absolute and relative. So something to keep an eye on. Ferrari, again, look, as an auto, it's the best by a mile. Probably finding it probably didn't participate much last week. This little gap here was your first reason to be lighter, and it's worked well as being a little bit of a sell-off. Now it's not a big pullback. It's still all it's really done is come back and test this gap up, which again is not the end of the world, and but I would just think it's unlikely to fall apart, but is just going to go sideways here between in this little range for a period, and maybe ultimately sets up another push down the line. Pernod, there is more of a nibble on this than say LVMH or some of the others in that kind of group. It's just become a little bit stickier down here, which is good to see. Getting it above this 130 area or 131 is key, because it does look different then. This spike here, which is on numbers, gives you an indication that there is a bit going on down here. There is a bit of power. Now, it was all sellers when it got up here, but it is trying to work higher, and of the really beaten up names, it's probably the one that interests most, just because of the way it's with what date is this? Like, it's 2 or 3 months in here now trying to get going. Get it above 131 or 132 again, I think it looks different, and even the relative has tried to flatten out. And much like the comment with LVMH. The difference here is if you look at where it stopped, it is into a logical area for at least a nibble. So we'll see if it if it pushes on. Hermes, pretty disappointing. Now it has reset better. Like you've had a this low from May held, and I guess you could just extend this trend channel downward, and it's still holding within it. Now it's too weak to trust it, but still to me is a better setup than LVMH. But there's no power there yet, so we'll have to just wait. Saffron, uh, really bullish reset. This looks now like it's going to keep going, and that's very impressive. So that's one of the ones that we've been watching and has developed better than most. Sanofi, it's fine, but just too messy. But maybe there's what you'd love to see is a big gap and just get it out of, clear all this range. And if you're opening up at 110 or 115, then that's definitely something you can follow. But for now, I think it's still a mess. Banco Santander, nice little move outside of this. Still very strong. SAP, higher, working higher, new highs in the relative, very bullish. Saint-Gobain, super impressive move out of this range, very tidy. Love the relative. Yeah, I think that can trend here now, and it looks very impressive. Siemens, yeah, we kind of look not being bearish on it, but just kind of making the point that it's doing everything below this range. Now, the fact that CAT and a few of them big industrials have improved a lot, you would think it should be able to follow, but still not as strong as some of the other ones that we're probably going to see. Schneider very soon. It's not in that camp yet, so Stellantis still drifting lower. Schneider's here now, so you can see that like much better structure, relative has improved. So yeah, strong. Total held the support, hasn't fallen apart. I think that's just still a slow, steady grinder. Unicredit back to highs, impressive. Volkswagen just again do nothing, trying to carve out lows, has stopped where you might expect it to stop. And Walters Kluwer, as ever, is very strong.